The sun blazes over Maplewood Estates, an upscale, HOA-controlled community where appearances are everything. Perfectly manicured lawns, pristine driveways, identical beige houses with navy shutters, like something out of a catalog. It's the kind of place where silence isn't peaceful, it's enforced. I moved here 3 years ago, the only black homeowner in the entire neighborhood. At first, I thought I'd lucked out. Good schools, quiet streets, property value on the rise. But Maplewood has an unspoken rule. People like me don't belong. They tolerate me because I keep my yard neat, wave politely, and don't make waves. But today, something feels off. I step outside, coffee in hand, and instantly feel it. That prickling awareness that I'm being watched. Across the street, an older white couple, the Petersons, stand frozen on their porch, eyes darting between me and the empty space on my roof.
Wait.
Empty? My stomach drops. The solar panels.
Gone.
All $1,000 worth of them. Just yesterday, they gleamed in the sunlight, soaking up energy. Now, there's nothing but empty brackets and faint dust outlines where they used to sit. A chill runs through me. This isn't just theft, this is targeted. I set my coffee down, forcing my breathing to stay even. Maybe it's a mistake. Maybe a contractor took them by accident. Maybe. A familiar voice cuts through my thoughts.
Oh.
You're finally up. I turn to see Meredith Sinclair, HOA president, standing on the sidewalk like she owns the whole street. Tall, blonde, and perfectly pressed, she gives me a saccharine smile. The kind white women wear when they want to act friendly, but really aren't. I had them removed, she says breezily, as if she's talking about a misplaced lawn gnome. I blink. Excuse me? She sighs, tilting her head like I'm a child who just doesn't understand. You violated HOA policy. Solar panels are an eyesore, and they don't match community aesthetics. My blood goes cold. I read the HOA guidelines before I installed them. There's nothing against solar panels. Nothing. I take a slow step toward her. And where are they now? She waves a manicured hand. Disposed of.
Disposed.
Of my property. My investment. My jaw clenches. She trespassed. She stole from me. And the way she's smiling? Like she thinks I'm just going to accept it? Like she's done me a favor? My pulse pounds, but I force my voice to stay level. You had no right. Her expression hardens. You can take it up with the board. Then she turns on her heel, already dismissing me. That's when it clicks. This isn't just about HOA rules. This is about control. About reminding me that no matter how much I pay for my home, no matter how well I follow their rules, I will never be one of them. I exhale slowly, suppressing the fire in my gut. Meredith Sinclair just made a huge mistake. Because she doesn't know who I am. She doesn't know I work for the government. And she sure as hell doesn't know that I'm an investigator specializing in HOA fraud. This isn't over. This is just the beginning. The morning air is thick with tension. Something about this feels bigger than just some HOA nonsense. I've seen pettiness before, passive-aggressive letters about trash bins, fines for grass an inch too high, but this is different. I pull out my phone, scrolling through my HOA agreement. Nowhere does it say solar panels are banned. I double-check state laws. Solar access rights are protected. Meredith had no legal grounds to do this. A slow, sinking realization settles in my chest. She thinks she can get away with it. Because who's going to stop her? Not the HOA board. They're all her friends. Not the neighbors. They'll look the other way. I glance around. A few people peek through their curtains, quickly turning away when I meet their eyes. The Petersons are still on their porch, shifting uncomfortably. I cross the street. Did you see what happened? Mr. Peterson clears his throat. They came early. A truck. HOA hired them. Mrs. Peterson nudges him sharply, her eyes darting toward Meredith's house.
Fear. They don't want to get involved.
I lower my voice. You know that's illegal, right? Mr. Peterson sighs, rubbing his temple. Look, son, I don't want trouble. There it is. Son. I bite down the irritation. He's not trying to be offensive, at least not intentionally. But there's an undertone. A reminder. that I'm not really one of them, that my complaints won't be taken seriously. I nod slowly. I understand. But I don't. I don't understand how people let this happen, how they stand by while someone like Meredith abuses her power. I head back to my house, my mind racing. I need proof. Pulling up my security footage, I rewind to last night. 4:12 a.m. A white utility truck pulls up. Two men hop out, wearing unmarked uniforms. No hesitation. No paperwork. Just thieves, acting under orders. Then I see her, Meredith, standing there, arms crossed, watching them work. My stomach twists. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was premeditated. A knock at my door makes me jump. I open it to find a thick envelope taped to my door. HOA stationery. Inside, a letter. Due to your continued violations and failure to comply with Maplewood Estate's aesthetic standards, the HOA has issued a fine of $3,000. Failure to pay will result in further action. I grip the letter so hard my knuckles whiten. They didn't just take my panels, they're trying to extort me. And the worst part? They think I'll just pay up. I take a deep breath. They don't know who they're messing with. I grab my laptop and start typing. It's time to dig. I don't waste time. I compile the footage, screenshots of state laws, and the HOA agreement. Everything. Then I march straight to the Maplewood Estates HOA office. It's a small brick building on the edge of the neighborhood, practically a shrine to suburban control. Inside, the air is thick with the scent of lemon polish and entitlement. A young woman at the front desk, her name tag reading Ashley, barely looks up. I need to speak with the HOA president. She sighs, flipping through a magazine. You need an appointment. I drop the envelope of evidence onto the counter. It's urgent. Her lips purse, but before she can protest, a familiar voice rings out. Oh, it's you again. Meredith stands in the hallway, arms crossed. Unlike our last encounter, there's no fake friendliness now, just thinly veiled annoyance. I pick up my envelope and walk toward her. You trespassed on my property. You stole from me. Her eyes flick to the receptionist. Ashley, take an early lunch. Ashley hurries out, leaving us alone. Meredith gestures toward the small conference room. I follow. She sits at the head of the long oak table like it's a throne. I don't sit. You're making a scene, she says smoothly. That's not very neighborly of you. I set the security footage on the table. Explain this. She leans back, completely unbothered. As I told you before, solar panels disrupt the uniformity of the neighborhood. That's a lie. I throw a copy of the HOA guidelines in front of her. There's no rule against them.
You targeted me.
A slow, amused smile spreads across her lips. You're welcome to challenge it. The board will review your complaint. I grit my teeth. You mean your friends? She shrugs, unapologetic. That's how it works. We maintain standards. People who don't fit those standards tend to have a hard time here. There it is. The subtext. People like me. I lean in, voice steady. You stole $1,000 worth of equipment. That's a crime. She waves a hand. The HOA has discretionary authority. It's already been handled. She thinks she's invincible. I pull out my phone. I've already filed a police report. For the first time, she hesitates. Just a flicker. Then, her mask snaps back into place. You'll find that local authorities don't like to get involved in HOA matters. My stomach twists.
She's right.
I've seen it before, law enforcement brushing off cases like this as civil disputes. But what she doesn't know, I don't need local authorities. I place my business card on the table. Jonathan Reed, federal investigator. The blood drains from her face. You, she breathes. I let the silence hang. Now she knows. Her hands grip the table. She recovers fast, but not fast enough. I saw the fear. She swallows. You never disclosed that when you moved in. I smirk. Didn't think I needed to. Her fingers twitch, but she forces a polite smile. Well, Jonathan, I'm sure this is all a misunderstanding. Let's discuss a resolution. Now she wants to negotiate. But I'm not done. Not just yet. First, I want the names of the contractors you hired. Her mask cracks again. She hesitates. Because she knows what I'll find. I grab my folder and head for the door.
Fine.
I'll find them myself. Her voice stops me. Wait. I turn. She forces another smile, but her voice wavers. Let's be reasonable. I raise an eyebrow. Like you were? She exhales sharply. Give me a few days. I nod, pretending to consider. You have 24 hours. I leave, heart pounding. Now the real battle begins. The next morning, I wake up to find an email from the HOA board. Emergency meeting. 5 p.m. Attendance required. I smirk. Meredith is panicking. She must have realized by now that I wasn't bluffing. But she still thinks she can outmaneuver me. That's her mistake. At exactly 5 p.m., I walk into the HOA's community center. The board members, 5 older, white homeowners, sit at a long table, with Meredith at the center. She's composed, her hands folded neatly, but I can see the tension in her shoulders. The room is packed. More people than usual. Word must have spread. I take a seat near the front, arms crossed. Meredith clears her throat. Thank you all for coming on such short notice. We are here to address the misconduct of one of our residents, Mr. Reed. I bite back a laugh. Of course. She continues. Mr. Reed has chosen to escalate a simple HOA violation into a disruptive and hostile situation. He has harassed board members and made baseless accusations. A murmur runs through the crowd. Some nod along. Others exchange uncertain glances. She's trying to frame me as the problem. I let her talk. Let her dig her own grave. She gestures toward a thick folder in front of her. The HOA has reviewed the matter and found that Mr. Reed's solar panels were non-compliant with our community standards. As such, their removal was justified. I lean forward. That's interesting, because I reviewed the bylaws and there's no rule against solar panels. A ripple of uncertainty spreads through the room. Meredith's smile tightens. That is at the board's discretion. I pull out a printed copy of the HOA's governing documents. Actually, per section 14.3, any changes to HOA guidelines require a community vote. When exactly did that happen? Silence. One of the board members, an older man named Richard, shifts uncomfortably. Meredith clears her throat. The board is entrusted with maintaining community aesthetics. So no vote then. I set my papers down. That means your removal of my solar panels was unauthorized. And since they were worth over $1,000, that makes it a felony theft.
Gasps.
Someone whispers, felony. Meredith's eyes flash. This is ridiculous. I pull my phone. Not according to the state law. I turn the screen so the entire room can see. In fact, removing legally installed solar panels without consent violates both state and federal energy laws. The murmurs grow louder. They're listening now. Meredith stiffens. Well, Mr. Reed, if you have an issue, you are welcome to pursue legal action. But the HOA has already voted on this matter. I smile. Really? Because I also filed a report with the state's housing authority. She blinks. I continue. And they were very interested in the fact that the HOA removed private property without due process. Her breath catches. That's the first real sign of fear. I stand, pulling out another piece of paper. Oh, and one more thing. I place it on the table. A subpoena. Dead silence. I take my time before speaking. I pulled public records. Turns out, the HOA has been making discretionary removals on select houses, only the ones owned by minorities. A collective gasp ripples through the crowd. Meredith's face goes pale. I press on. The state is now investigating the HOA for discriminatory enforcement of policies. Her composure cracks. This is a witch hunt. I let the moment hang before I deliver the final blow. The state attorney general's office doesn't think so. Her mouth opens, closes. No words come out. I lean forward. You can resign tonight. Or you can fight the lawsuit that's coming. Your call. Checkmate. For the first time, Meredith is speechless. Her fingers twitch against the tabletop as if grasping for control that's already slipping through her hands. The board members exchange uneasy glances. Richard, the only one who seems remotely interested in self-preservation, clears his throat. Now, let's not jump to conclusions. I cut him off. This isn't a conclusion. It's evidence. I turned back to Meredith. You knew this was illegal. You knew you had no right. And yet, you sent contractors onto my property to steal from me. Then you had the audacity to fine me for your crime. Meredith scoffs, regaining some of her arrogance. You can make all the accusations you want, but at the end of the day, this is an HOA matter. The government isn't going to get involved in a neighborhood dispute. I smirk. I'd agree with you if I hadn't brought them here. The room collectively turns toward the entrance as two uniformed officers step inside, followed by a stern-looking man in a gray suit. Murmurs ripple through the room. Some people shift uncomfortably. Others stare in shock. The man in the suit steps forward and pulls out a badge. I'm Assistant Attorney General Mark Hensley. We've been reviewing allegations of discriminatory enforcement within this HOA, and thanks to Mr. Reed's evidence, we've expedited our investigation. The color drains from Meredith's face. That's outrageous. We haven't done anything wrong. Hensley calmly sets a stack of papers on the table. Actually, we've found a pattern. Over the last 5 years, your board has fined and harassed minority homeowners at nearly 4 times the rate of white homeowners. Additionally, records show you've approved cosmetic changes for some residents while denying the same requests from others. And then there's the matter of the missing HOA funds. That last part hits like a grenade. Missing funds, someone whispers. I tilt my head. Oh, you didn't think I'd stop at my case, did you, Meredith? Her entire body goes rigid. I continue. See, I noticed a pattern. When I checked HOA financial reports, some things didn't add up. Thousands of dollars in contractor fees that didn't match any real work orders. I glance at Hensley. So, I pass that information along. Hensley nods. We traced over $200,000 in misallocated HOA funds over the last 3 years. And guess whose name appeared on several payments disguised as vendor fees? A single sheet of paper slides across the table. Meredith's name is printed all over it. The room erupts into whispers, gasps, and a few outright shouts of outrage. One of the board members, a woman in her 60s, shoves back her chair. You told us the finances were fine. Meredith stumbles to her feet, her voice shrill. This is a mistake. A misunderstanding. The officers step forward. Meredith Caldwell, you are under arrest for felony theft and financial fraud. Her mouth opens in horror. No, this is wrong. She turns desperately to the board. You have to help me. Richard, looking suddenly pale, scoots his chair back. We had no idea. Another board member snorts. You were always a little too eager to find people, Meredith. The betrayal lands like a punch. She realizes she's alone. The officers pull out handcuffs. Ma'am, turn around. She does, but then, in a last act of desperation, she turns back to me. You did this, she hisses. You set me up. I don't blink. No, Meredith. You did this to yourself. The cuffs click into place. The room watches as she's escorted out, her once perfect posture crumbling under the weight of reality. The woman who thought she could control everything now has no control at all. As the doors close behind her, the stunned silence in the room breaks into a mixture of reactions, some horrified, some relieved, some furious. A few neighbors turn to me. You really brought in the Attorney General? I shrug. I don't like thieves. Richard, looking deeply uncomfortable, clears his throat. We should, discuss next steps. I lean back.
Yeah.
Let's talk about a new HOA board. Laughter ripples through the crowd, but I'm only half joking. The system that let Meredith thrive won't fix itself. And I intend to see this through. A week later, the HOA board holds another emergency meeting. This time, Meredith isn't here. Instead, she's been plastered all over the local news, HOA president arrested for fraud and racial discrimination. The footage of her being let out in handcuffs has gone viral, and homeowners from other neighborhoods are coming forward with their own horror stories. Her bank accounts? Frozen. Her assets? Under investigation. Her reputation?
Shattered.
The state has officially launched a case against the Maplewood Estates HOA for discriminatory enforcement and financial misconduct. Meredith is facing multiple felony charges, and the rest of the board is scrambling to distance themselves. But the community isn't buying it. At this meeting, people aren't afraid to speak. A black couple in the front row stands up. Meredith harassed us for 3 years. We paid thousands in fines while other neighbors got a free pass. An elderly Asian woman raises her hand. She rejected my porch railing because it clashed with the aesthetic. But 2 houses down, a white family had the same one. Even Richard, the former board member, looks ashamed. I should have spoken up, he admits.
Too little, too late.
I step forward. This board let Meredith operate unchecked for years. It's time for real change. And this time, the neighborhood agrees. By a near-unanimous vote, the entire board is dissolved. A new one is elected, made up of people who actually want to serve the community, not control it. As I leave the meeting, a man I don't recognize approaches. Mid-40s, Hispanic, tired but relieved. You're the reason we're free of her, he says. Thank you. I nod. It wasn't just me. It was all of us. He smiles, shaking my hand. Still, it took someone standing up first. I walk home that night under a sky full of stars. My house, my home, stands exactly as I left it. No trespassers, no threats, no stolen property. The next morning, contractors arrive to reinstall my solar panels. On the HOA's dime. And as the panels go back up, catching the first rays of the sun, I take a deep breath. This fight wasn't just about me. It was about standing up to power, exposing injustice, proving that no one, no matter how entitled, how untouchable they think they are, is above the law. Meredith learned that the hard way. And the next person who tries, they'll learn too.